On Wednesday, September 10th, the world woke up to yet another unsettling reminder of just how fragile Europe's security environment has become. News broke from Warsaw that Russian drones had breached Polish airspace overnight, an event that immediately reverberated through NATO capitals. The incident carried dangerous implications. Not only did it risk escalating the war in Ukraine, but it also tested the boundaries of NATO's collective defense obligations. Among the first to react publicly was United States President Donald Trump. His response, true to form, was sharp, direct, and unmistakably blunt. Posting on his Truth Social platform, Trump wrote, "What's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go." Donald Trump, President of the United States. The brevity of Trump's message belied its significance. Those 4 words, "Here we go," struck a chord that echoed across newsrooms, policy circles, and social media feeds. It was not merely a rhetorical question, but a loaded statement, a warning that the war in Ukraine may no longer remain confined to Ukrainian territory and that NATO could be inching closer to direct confrontation with Moscow. Poland's confirmation came swiftly. Officials in Warsaw stated that their air defences had engaged and successfully neutralised several drones believed to be of Russian origin. The drones had crossed into Polish territory during Moscow's latest overnight barrage against Ukrainian targets along the western frontier. While there were no immediate reports of casualties or damage, the breach itself carried grave weight. For Poland, a frontline NATO state that has been on high alert since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, this incident underscored just how real and present the threat has become. The country's military has invested heavily in air defences and coordination with NATO allies precisely for scenarios like this. Shooting down the drones was both a tactical necessity and a strategic signal. Poland is prepared, vigilant, and unwilling to tolerate any incursion onto its soil. In Washington, the initial reaction was more measured than Trump's. The White House refrained from making an immediate formal statement, but senior officials emphasized that the United States was closely monitoring developments and remained in constant contact with Warsaw. Coordination was ongoing, they said, to determine the scope and intent of the incident. Behind the scenes, the Biden administration understood the sensitivity. For months, US officials had warned of the possibility that Russian strikes could spill into NATO territory, whether by accident or design. The risk has always been that such violations could invoke Article 5, NATO's core commitment that an attack on one ally is considered an attack on all. Yet invoking Article 5 is no small matter. The clause has been triggered only once in NATO's history, after the September 11th attacks on the United States. Whether drone incursions of this type qualify depends on intent, impact, and the political will of the alliance. For now, officials emphasized restraint, stressing that while the breach was unacceptable, it had been contained. Analysts, however, were quick to warn that such incidents cannot be dismissed lightly. The danger lies in miscalculation. Drones and missiles do not always fly according to plan. Borders can be crossed inadvertently. But when weapons of war enter NATO territory, even by mistake, the potential consequences are enormous. Experts pointed to the precedent of 2022, when a missile landed in the Polish village of Przewodów, killing 2 civilians. That tragedy, initially feared to be a deliberate Russian strike, was later determined to have been caused by a misfired Ukrainian air defense missile. Even then, the world held its breath, bracing for what might follow. This time, however, the drones were intercepted before they could cause harm. And unlike the 2022 incident, suspicion immediately fell on Russia. That alone makes the episode more dangerous. Trump's reaction then took on added weight by writing, "What's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go." The president crystallized the unease felt across the West. His words suggested inevitability, that the escalation everyone has feared may finally be at hand. Supporters of Trump argued that his bluntness cut through the diplomatic fog. Critics, meanwhile, warned that such remarks risk inflaming tensions. Yet few denied that his words captured the reality of the moment. NATO's borders had been crossed. The alliance was once again staring into the abyss of potential escalation. For Poland, the incident underscores its role as Europe's shield. The country has borne immense responsibility since the war began, hosting millions of Ukrainian refugees, serving as the primary conduit for Western weapons deliveries, and strengthening its military presence along the eastern flank. The drone incursion reinforced what Polish leaders have long said, that their security is inseparable from the survival of Ukraine. European capitals reacted with predictable concern. Leaders in Berlin, Paris and Brussels reiterated their support for Poland and called for calm. Yet beneath the cautious statements lay deeper anxiety. If Moscow is willing to test NATO's borders, even indirectly, what might come next? Could similar incursions occur in the Baltics? Could deliberate provocations follow? Military strategists warn that such grey zone tactics are part of Russia's playbook. By testing the limits without crossing them fully, Moscow seeks to probe NATO's resolve. The goal is to instill uncertainty, to see how far the alliance will go in defending its territory without escalating into full war. This leaves NATO in a difficult position: respond too forcefully and risk uncontrollable escalation, respond too weakly and risk emboldening Moscow. It is a tightrope act with no easy answers. As one senior analyst explained, the incident is less about the drones themselves and more about the precedent they set. Every time Russian weapons enter NATO airspace, even briefly, the risk of a catastrophic misunderstanding grows. And in a conflict already defined by brinkmanship, misunderstandings can be deadly. Trump's comment thus resonated not only because of what it said, but because of what it implied. The phrase "here we go" suggested a threshold has been crossed, that the long-feared slide into broader confrontation might now be underway. For Washington, the challenge is to maintain unity among allies. Some NATO members, particularly those on the eastern flank, are pressing for a stronger response. Others, mindful of escalation risks, advocate restraint. The balance between deterrence and caution has never been more delicate. In the broader context of the war, the drone incursion is a reminder that the conflict in Ukraine cannot be neatly contained. Despite efforts to prevent spillover, the proximity of Ukraine to NATO's borders makes such incidents almost inevitable. As long as Russia continues its campaign, the risk of cross-border escalation will remain. Ordinary citizens in Poland and across Europe feel this reality acutely. For them, the war is not distant, but close, tangible and threatening. Air raid sirens, troop movements and now drone interceptions are daily reminders that peace is fragile. Looking ahead, NATO will likely intensify its monitoring and strengthen air defence coordination. Consultations among allies are expected, and Poland will push for clarity on how such breaches should be handled. The alliance's credibility, after all, rests on its ability to defend its borders. In the end, the drone incident may not trigger a formal Article 5 response, but it has already triggered something else, a renewed sense of vulnerability and urgency. It has reminded the world that the line between war in Ukraine and war with NATO is thin, dangerously thin. And in the words of Donald Trump, it has reminded us of the possibility that the moment of escalation may already be upon us. What's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go. Donald Trump, President of the United States.